through courage, sacrifice, and through will. And the Allies won because industry built combat power at scale, a scale that the Axis powers could never match. And American sustainment delivered from the factory floor to the fighting positions across the globe. During the Second World War, American industry produced 310,000 aircraft, 124,000 ships of all types, 100,000 tanks, and 41 billion rounds of ammunition of all types, large and small. Sustainment delivered all that production capability into combat power, and this is how industry scales into readiness and how sustainment wins wars. At present, to set the theater, our allies and partners enable us to posture forces forward, pre-position sustainment, and develop distribution capability across critical nodes. Setting the theater facilitates the flow of sustainment to the joint force and our treasured allies and partners. And our network of joint theater distribution centers establishes a persistent forward presence throughout the Indo Pacific. And I'll do a shout out to my treasured J4, General Martine Kidd, helping to lead that effort for United States Indo-Pacific Command. These are multimodal, networked logistics hubs that enable the distribution of bulk storage for the joint force, and USAPAC is leading the way. Our joint sustainment decision tool provides critical capability that enables us to see, understand, direct, synchronize, predict sustainment operations in a contested logistic environment. And again, a shout out to my dear friend and teammate, Martine, on helping us lead that effort. Our sustainment community moves fuel, munitions, water, vehicles, medical supplies, and repair parts. The community fights through the contested environment to deliver and support warfighters, and that's readiness. In our recent Bala-Katan, and I'm hours from returning from Bala-Katan, we had seamless integration of soldiers and Marines operating with airmen, sailors, guardians, and our allies across land, air, sea, cyber, information, and space domains. And our sustainment capability enabled all of that in the, even in the environment where so much force is operating in the Middle East. Indo-Pacific Command managed the largest Bala-Katan ever without any interruption in operation across all these domains. This year, we added 5 partner neighbors and 17,000 troops in Bala-Katan, marking a strategic evolution from a bilateral exercise to a full-scale, multinational mission rehearsal for the defense of the Republic of Philippines. Our multinational joint force is ready. We'll return to Sarn Anderson in Okinawa in 1945. At 0300, he had an exposed flank, an enemy counterattack, wounded soldiers, limited ammunition, and seconds to act. Industry produced the rounds. Sustainers moved across the Pacific. His unit kept ammunition forward. Sergeant Anderson held his ground. His report reached the command post, and fires answered, timely and lethal. The system worked under pressure, and Sergeant Anderson was ready. Let's us resolve to be ready in the Pacific century, be ready across all domains, land power seamlessly integrating across the maritime, air, space, information, and cyber domains. Ready with allies and partners, ready with industry, ready with sustainment forward. Stay forward, stay integrated, stay readiness. Deterrence demands that we be ready. Deterrence is our highest duty. And with that, I'd like to open the floor to any question on any topic. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Sean Hegerkin, Commander, 1st Theater Information Advantage
Oh,
Attachment.
here you go. Sorry, Sean. Thank you.
Hey, sir, thanks for coming out and your continued support to the land forces that we have here. In your opening comments, you talked about the 3 different things that are coming about. I want to, of course, focus on the information aspect there. And with that being that important, can you describe to us how you are prioritizing and therefore resourcing your activities inside the information environment to gain and maintain the deterrence you talked about?
Thank you, Sean. I think at the dawn of the 21st century, our error in thinking about information operations, and I think that the force with its late 20th century emphasis on fires and maneuver let this topic lay fallow, and then information became something that we kind of bolted on after the fact. And we'd say, like, okay, oh, by the way, here are the information operations that we're going to conduct. I would invite the team to read a book called The Deceivers, that is the history of information operations, cognitive operations in the Pacific War. And I'd also like to acknowledge the U.S. Army's doctrinal ownership of PSYOPs above all other services as being really seminal in keeping the torch on information operations. And so at Indo Pacific Command, information operations is line of effort number 1, and it is an all-encompassing line of effort for us. And this is this combination of our strategic communications, how we express the ideas to ourselves, our allies and partners, even our would-be adversaries. This includes our public affairs posture, our MISO efforts, military information and supportive operations, our deception operations, the way that we execute assured C2, our own ability to see, understand, decide, act, assess, learn, and achieve mission command principles throughout the force. Our ability to frustrate our enemy's ability to do these things, our ability to dazzle, deceive, destroy our would-be adversaries' ability to see and sense the environment, how we execute deterrence through the communication of capability and will, but do so in such a way that does not sacrifice any operational security of our most treasured gems in the crown in our ability to fight and to win. And these principles have got to be baked in everything that we do, from day-to-day competition as we execute the dynamic demonstration of combat power, of how we do crisis. Every conflict begins with a crisis, but not every crisis ends with a conflict. And our own successful execution within a crisis is not typified by a transition to conflict, but our ability to forestall conflict through deterrence. And then in the way that we use information operations to set the advantage, as we are executing all of the moose-muss principles of war that apply, that help us have the capability to put decisive mass offensively on our enemy's center of gravity, how we do so with the state of surprise, how we maintain the security of our force, how we maneuver and sustain our force under these conditions. And our AI tools are going to be the absolute key advantage on this. And so, when you talk to people and they talk about AI, they think, okay, yeah, AI in military applications, that's swarming drones. At the next level up from a swarming drone formation or a building autonomy into our weapon system, at the next level is how do we execute C2 in ways that enable us to see, understand, decide, act, executing 7 joint functions in concert with one another, in ways where we're not just running 7 individual stovepipes for joint functions, but how each one affects the other. And how are we using our AI tools to assess the progress of our campaign, to better understand our adversary's strategy, to better enable us to execute our strategy? This is the overarching not just the meta trend one, but the mega trend around it, is that ultimately information operations is that who's got the best basis to see, understand, decide, act, and assess, and to use our tools to frustrate our enemy's ability to do this. And so if all of warfare is the continuation of policy by other means, and the word root of policy has to do with people and thought and cognition, this is why information operations is the first, middle, and last thing that we think about and that we execute on every single thing that we do. And I will say unabashedly, and without pandering to the crowd, that the United States Army leads the way on PSYOP and information operations. And that's no reason to rest on our laurels. It's just a reason for the whole joint force to get with it and to bring all of our gifts against that. And Sean, thank you for, we know each other a little bit, so thank you for all. We know each other more than just a little bit. Thanks. I did not plant him for that question, but I will be paying him.
Thank you, sir. My name is Jack Oswald. I'm the CEO of an air defense manufacturer, California. As we think about the asymmetric threat, say the long-range attack drones, right? We've seen thousands in months in CENTCOM. We see hundreds of thousands a month in places like Ukraine, and we have to anticipate millions in the Indo Pacific theater. How are you thinking about the unfair advantages we have with autonomy versus the need for wartime level productions of critical munition systems?
Yeah, we need it now. I couldn't agree more on millions. I think the Ukrainians are putting together, I think they're delivering about 100,000 per month is the production rate for the Ukrainians. Knit that together, that's 1.2 million over a year, and now they're entering into the 5th year of that conflict. So scaling at that, so that number one is having an on-hand magazine of cheap kill. And to call it a drone, what's the difference between a drone and a missile? And it's kind of a semantic difference. A drone originally, before there were such a thing as unmanned aerial systems, a drone was a low-value insect that had but one function within the hive and then dutifully died after. I think it's an apt description of what a drone does. We have an aerial system. The Army is procuring these at scale. It's a missile. It can go over 1,000 miles. You can check on its health in flight. It's super stealthy. It penetrates every air defense, and it can put a 1,000-pound warhead on the eye of a needle, except it costs $1.2 to $2 million, and it's called a Tomahawk land attack missile. And our date of introduction of that system is 1978, when we first fielded the damn thing, too. But at $1.2 to $2 million each, the economics is just not there when you can have a similar system for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and you can produce them at scale. And so this meta trend of the commoditization of cheap kill is then one that we either adapt to and put American industry and American innovation and allied industry and allied innovation against this problem at scale, or we lose deterrence and we lose the war. And it means that we've got to do things differently in the acquisition space. And on this, I applaud the department's $1.5 trillion budget submission with hundreds of billions of dollars dedicated against drone dominance for the United States and for our allies and partners, so that we can, in fact, scale to this changing character of warfare. Thank you for that question.
Hey,
it's good to see you,
Admiral.
General.
Great to see you again, and thanks again for coming, like 5th or 6th iteration in addressing the conference here. Let me ask an Old Dominion alumni question for you. Last year's large-scale exercise 2025, big naval exercise, most of the industry base here understands it, used this theater, as you know. Webb Kohler and the team decisively involved with the exercise. But similar in the past, there were two main takeaways, lessons learned or challenges, had to do with fuel and munitions. You kind of touched on the munitions piece, but how, for all of us in the defense industrial base, can we assist in the setting the theater for this environment on those two challenges as we look to the future? Sir, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Our primary adversary believes in the heart of their doctrine that what won the Second World War was our sustainment capability and our ability to scale. And if we come back to kind of the basics of warfare, it's who puts energy, mass, times accuracy, divided by initial magazine, plus loadout, times the effectiveness of our command and control to work. But there's no getting around the mass and energy question in the end. And you know, this is just the essence of the physics of the fight. And so we're not going to be able to distill exotic capabilities in the theater in order to produce energy on the cheap. Is that when we talk about the mass and energy equation, mass is measured in grams, energy is measured in megajoules, and for instance, diesel fuel has 40 megajoules per kilogram is the amount of energy that's in a kilogram of diesel fuel. And so getting to the point where we've got pre-position of stocks across defense fueling support points across the Pacific with a realistically calculated amount of fuel that reflects where we are, and in getting munitions pre-poed in a secure manner so that they're not just sitting ducks on day one. You know, I got good news and bad news, sir. Tell me what's the bad news. Well, the enemy decimated all of our pre-positioned ammunition stocks. What's the good news? The good news is it went right according to plan, and all of the pre-positioned stocks were there. And so I think that one is that at first is that we have to look at our own problems for USG in how we are financing and procuring fueling support points, fueling nodes, and ammunition. And then we've got to be smart about how and where we are pre-positioning ammunition stocks. It's because in this 21st century warfare environment, you must revet those things that can't be moved, and you must always be moving the things that you can. And I think those are critically important. First, we've got to get the policy right within USG, and then number two is that industry has got to take some risk itself, as we move forward. And there are a number of I'm asked about the Middle East fight and the extent to which it's employing weapons that are salient for the Pacific fight. And when we do, it's important for us that we increase our capacity for some of those exquisite munitions for which there's no substitute, and we double, triple, quadruple our production rates by using some creativity and doing some risk-taking. But then for the non-traditional makers, they can use advanced additive manufacturing to manufacture more munitions at scale. And maybe those munitions are 90% of the capability of the exquisite munitions, but maybe they're delivered at 10% of the cost. And as you know, quantity has a quality all its own. So that's how we're thinking about the problem moving forward. As I've said, at $1.5 trillion, this year's presidential budget submission for supercharging the defense industrial base, I think, is really important. And now it's up to us to deliver. Thank you, General.
Sir, I am Brigadier Sharma, sir. I am the Indian Military Attaché in DC, sir.
Namaste.
It's a privilege to interact with the Admiral. I'm pretty enthused with the idea of the biggest theater command or the combatant command is the Indo Pacific. So you range from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean. In your understanding, sir, just for my own clear thoughts, what is the spatial center of gravity for the Indo-PACOM commander? And how do you visualize the land forces contributing to your vision?
Understood. I think on the spatial center of gravity, if you were to take the world and take the economic center of gravity of the world 150 years ago, it probably would have been squarely in Eastern Europe, is where the economic center of gravity of the world. I think you could go into your devices and look this up maybe. Today, the economic center of gravity of the world is here in the Indo Pacific. And if you ask me, where is the spatial center of gravity? I'm not going to tell you that. One is that the main locus that we have at Indo Pacific Command, per the National Defense Strategy, is to deter China and to deter their activities wherever they threaten America's national interests and the interests of our allies and partners. And so that's how number one, we're thinking of this Indo-Pacific century as the world's center of gravity from the standpoint of growth and vitality in the 21st century. That doesn't negate any of the other areas there, but where the growth and the headspace are for the 21st century is going to be in the Indo-Pacific. India very much included it. 1.4 billion people on a pure growth trajectory, just to understand that. And when you ask about land power, I wish that we wouldn't speak about land power. I think we think about all domain power. But to limit a discussion to land power is to say, okay, it's person against person, on land, for land, and I applaud the armies that are here, is that armies are thinking about applying 7 joint functions across all domains where and when they matter the most. And so if there is a threat by sea, the ability of land forces to deliver fires and effects on those operational and tactical centers of gravity is where the value of those forces are. So I don't like to talk about land power. I like to talk about land forces and land forces' ability to affect events across all domains. They always have, and they always will. And so, I'll tell you, very frankly, is that our growth trajectory with India is on a steep trajectory in our alliances and our partnerships. And while India treasures its non-aligned status, we've seen the growing and growing convergence between the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy, more and more in our common interests in this, the Indo-Pacific century. So thank you very much.
Admiral Paparo, Sasha Kanani with Axelon Aerospace. Where do you see the biggest gap between what industry is offering today and where what the joint forces actually need to operate at scale across the Pacific region?
Thank you, sir. Well, I see the scale and the speed of production. And so on the part of the traditional primes, it's not going to be a secret to anybody in this room that our budgeting of capability and the delivering of that capability, there's a gap, and we've got to do better on that. As we have Patriot missiles, for instance, we seek to triple the production rate of Patriot missile systems. And for non-traditional defense contractors, what I'm seeing is I see the promises on paper. I can see the engineering that's evident on the paper, and the innovation within those systems, making them simple where they can be simple and complex where they must be complex. But the ability to transition from a small lab in Torrance, California, to a large production line anywhere in the United States is where I see that gap. And so it is all within the realm of possibility, and it's practical from a physics standpoint, but we've got to see it scale and deliver in the kind of quantities that are going to be decisive. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for being here. Please give Admiral Paparo a big round of applause.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you again, Admiral Paparo, for your remarks. We'll continue this afternoon with a look at technologies defining the next generation of leadership: decision superiority, AI, machine learning, and the future of C2. This session explores how we'll integrate emerging tech to maintain the initiative in complex environments. Moderating this panel is Lieutenant General retired Neil Thurgood. Dr. Thurgood is the Senior Vice President at Anduril, where he oversees the Air and Ground Deterrence Division. Prior to Anduril, Neil served over 37 years retiring as a Lieutenant General, Director of the Rapid Army Capabilities and Critical Technology Office. He holds a BS from the University of Utah, Master's of Science in Strategic Studies from the Air War College, Systems Management from Naval Postgraduate School, and he's also a Doctor of Business from University of Sarasota. Please join me in a round of applause for Lieutenant General Neil Thurgood. The floor is yours, sir.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it. Well, it's great to be here today. I have to tell you, I was a little bit nervous sitting over there with Admiral Paparo. The last time I talked to him, I was in uniform and shooting a long-range missile shot, and it didn't go as well as it should have. And I was receiving a great transmission from him. And so it was great to see him today. General Brown, thanks for all that you do for us in the Army and our nation. And General Clark, I know he stepped out with Admiral Paparo, but thanks for what you're doing. Listen, it's great to be here today. Hopefully the discussion today will be enlightening. We have some phenomenal leaders here with us, both on the military side, international side, and on the industry side. I'd like to start off with a little bit of a scene setter so that we can kind of get a sense of where we're headed with this. And Admiral Paparo did a great job with his mega trend, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. I think I'd begin with saying that we're probably at a tipping point with what is rapidly becoming a decisive point for our military, especially in the 21st century. And that decisive point probably is decision superiority, and Admiral Paparo just talked about that. For decades, we grew up in the military. We focused on platforms. We built better tanks and better jets and better boats, faster weapons, more precise weapons. But today, that advantage is shifting from a great weapon system that's an individual platform where it's no longer the decisive edge to the ability of the platforms to work together, to understand, to decide, to act faster, and to effectively work across all the domains. At the heart of that transformation is artificial intelligence and machine learning in the command and control aspects of warfare, as Admiral Paparo just talked about. We're operating in an environment that is saturated with data, more data than we've ever had on the battlefield. Unprecedented volumes of data, but what do we do with it? How do we use it? How do we synthesize it? How do we bring it to the useful outcome for the commander? And then how do we deploy all the artificial intelligence associated with it? Let's be clear. Artificial intelligence is not designed to replace the commander. It is designed to assist the commander in making better decisions and more timely decisions with more data and information available. There are probably three trends that we should be considering. The first is the shifting from a linear kill chain to a network kill web. Second, conflicts will be defined by speed in the future. More importantly, decision speed. And third, C2 is no longer a fixed system. It's becoming modular, software-driven, and continuously upgrading. The race, it's not for better information, but for faster, more accurate information. And the panel we have today is uniquely designed to talk about that aspect of warfare as we move forward. So let me give a brief introduction, and then we'll let each of the panel members have an opening comment, and then we'll open it up for questions. Denise, to my right, is the NetCom Commanding General and accountable for the operation and defense of our networks, our network modernization, and operating our cyber mission forces, the welfare of all NetCom soldiers, civilians, and their families. Most recently, she served as the Director for Network Command, Control, Communication, and Computer Services and Integrated Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff, G6. She's also served as the G6 here in Indo Pacific. Denise has commanded at every level, leading successful operations in peace and in combat. To her right is Mikkel Teek, who is joining us as part of our international panel here today. A very extensive background in many areas of the operations that we're currently executing. And I'll let you spend some more time in telling about yourself, because you have a very fascinating background, and I probably won't do it justice. Tom Gutierrez, to the right of there, serves as the Chief AI and Data Officer at Govini, the defense software company transforming defense acquisition from an outdated manual process to a software-driven strategic advantage. In this role, Tom oversees the decision science function in identifying and leveraging data science across Govini's vast data and deploying AI-driven features into platforms. Tom has been a key architect in Govini's role as a core partner of the U.S. Army's Next Generation Command and Control Initiative. We're super glad to have you here today. Right to the right of Tom is Colonel Matt Skaggs. And Matt, I'll let you introduce yourself when you get down there. Extensive background, both here operationally and as a senior leader. And then on the far end, and we have the panel buttressed by two stars to keep us in control of the panel, so we appreciate that. John was commissioned as an infantry officer in the United States Military Academy in 1994, has held a variety of positions in both the conventional and special operations units. John has commanded at all levels, including in the 82nd Airborne Division, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and the 101st Airborne Air Assault Division, as well as an instructor at West Point. He most recently served as the Deputy Commanding General of the 18th Airborne Corps. His deployments include tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, Haiti, Kosovo, and most recently, Operation European Assure, deter and reinforce in Europe. Currently, John is the Commanding General of the 11th Airborne Division. So we're extremely glad to have all of you today. Please give the panelists a round of applause. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Denise for opening comments. Thank you, Denise.
Okay. Hey, thanks, sir. And General Brown and AUSA team, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. So I am the Commanding General of U.S. Army Network Enterprise Command. It is a global command, about 10,000 civilian and military mix. That doesn't include contractors. And we support about 288 base post camp stations. We are responsible for securing, operating, and defending the Army's portion of the Department of War's information network. And it's an interesting time and a unique time to where we are both a consumer of artificial intelligence as well as ensuring and assuring that we can enable the warfighter the ability to leverage and use artificial intelligence themselves. So it is a great pleasure to be here. Look forward to the conversation. There is all the craze right now about artificial intelligence, which is absolutely applicable. And I loved your comment about it doesn't replace commanders; it empowers commanders. So with that, I will hand it back over to you, sir.
Great, thanks, Mr. Teek. Please tell us a little bit about your background too, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you. First of all, pleasure to be here. It's 7,000 miles away. So I don't know how you found me. I have a guess, but thank you for inviting me over. I'm Mikkel Dick. I'm Deputy Commander of Estonian Cyber Command. So our mission set is a bit broader. So we provide all the functional services, the entire MOD, Also cyber defense, offensive operation, and information operations through the cyberspace. So this is kind of our cup of tea. And now with the latest lessons identified from Ukraine, also EW and AI is falling into our portfolio. So my background before that was when I joined the MOD as the first director of cyber policy department in 2014. I actually was on the good side. I was building services. And from then I joined the MOD and from there Cybercom, because we stood up our cyber command and they said, like, do what you actually wrote. So basically they forced me to come there. By education, I'm engineer, and I also have a reserve military kind of career as well. So I retired as a lieutenant. So Estonia, I don't know how many of you know what Estonia is or where it is. Like I said, it's 7,000 miles away. It's next to Finland, next to Latvia, and of course next to Russia. But in cyber, Russia is everybody's neighbor. So our background in this domain is quite impressive, I would say. This is due to my countrymen. The only thing that you can't do in Estonia online is basically getting married or divorced. Everything else you can do online. It takes us 5 minutes to declare taxes. Our ID card or digital signature, for example, saves us 2% of GDP. So it used to be our defense budget, but now the defense budget is 5.4%. And we've done it in a way that we have decentralized system and we have nationwide zero trust. So this is our background. I wish I could say the same thing about the military or how we operate as an alliance, but unfortunately I can't. But as a nation, I can show you there is proof that it can be done. So now coming to AI, on one side, we see our eastern neighbor using this actively already in operations. And on the other hand, we see that this is an opportunity for us because our geographic depth is not very good, so it's only a couple of 100 miles. So this means that our kind of how we wage our warfare has to be really kind of decentralized, and we have to enable the command to a very, very much lower level. So there's a huge opportunity, so AI would be a force multiplier for us, or enabler as such. It would allow us to kind of use units in a way that they are not meant to in normal warfare right now, but it can bring a huge change into our mindset. But we can't do it alone. So Estonia doesn't have the resources or the assets that all the AI solutions govern today. So basically, there has to be a huge interoperability with our partners. So we have US troops in Estonia, we have France, we have UK as a lead nation for enhanced forward presence. So if we can't talk to them or our AI can't talk to their AI, then our AI has a limited kind of use, I would say. So, and last but not least, I would definitely also emphasize where we are in the world geographically, that basically we have 300 miles of coastline, which means that most of our internet goes through those channels, and Russians have already been able to kind of disrupt those connections a few times. And we have only one landline which goes to Latvia and Lithuania, which happens to be also in Suwalki cap. So this means that while we are kind of thinking of this AI, we have to be sure and ensure that we are able to also fight without it, and the redundancy is there, so we can fight with pen and paper if necessary. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Pleasure to be here today on such a distinguished panel. I'm Tom Goder, Chief AI and Data Officer with Gavini. And if you're not familiar with Gavini, we're a defense software company. Our whole goal is to transform defense acquisition from a manual spreadsheet-driven process into an AI and software-enabled strategic advantage. Our core platform is ARC, is deployed across the Department of War for a variety of readiness-focused use cases, from sustainment to production. But of most relevance to the conversation today is our work with the Next Gen C2 program. Literally today, sustainers at the 4th Infantry Division are using ARC as the sustainment application as part of IVMAS. IVMAS is the culminating event of the Ivy Sting series, and throughout this series of exercises, and especially now in IVMAS, I think we're demonstrating how AI, machine learning, and integrated data as foundational to them are driving decision superiority through the lens of the sustainment warfighting function and through a tighter integration with the other warfighting functions. But maybe if I take a step back for a second and just say, I think we have a fundamental tempo asymmetry. We have decisions being made on the front lines in seconds, and we have an institutional delivery system that responds in months, if not years. And that creates a latency tax. We have requirements in legacy systems, and we have supplier information, capacity data in siloed off ERPs. For a demand signal to reach the suppliers from the front lines, it can take weeks because it's being transmitted through emails or spreadsheets or a variety of other manual communication pathways. And so I think to compete in the 21st century, we need to move beyond 20th century tools and 20th century processes, and that's where ARC and AI and machine learning can be leveraged. The Army for years has been talking about this sensor to shooter paradigm, which is fundamentally important, critical to winning the first battle, the second battle. But to win an enduring war or conflict, we really need to extend that framework. And that's where I think Next Gen C2, Colonel Skaggs sitting to my right, deserve a tremendous amount of credit, because now, instead of just talking about extending that framework from sensor to shooter to sustainer to supplier, we're actually operationalizing that model. And what that looks like at IVMAS is ARC, integrating a bunch of different Army databases, enriching that data with our commercial data, writing canonical sustainment data objects to a shared integrated data layer, and that data then being accessible and used by agents created by our partners for fires and targeting workflows, and then those agents acting in tandem with our agents and our predictive models to identify upcoming munitions, fuel shortages, and automatically trigger resupply. So it's definitely an exciting time in Next Gen C2, and can't wait to see where that goes. If I zoom out away from Next Gen C2 and think about applications of machine learning for decision superiority, I think about the work we're doing here in this theater, where we're helping to ensure continued operational readiness of our critical munitions and related weapon systems through the deployment of a myriad of machine learning models, all aimed at driving readiness within a constrained budget. And so what that looks like is looking at historical failure rates, right, and ensuring that we have the right material stocked in the right place to meet the mission. So when I think about what AI and ML mean for decision superiority through the sustainment lens, I'm thinking about it along those two vectors. One is ensuring that our warfighters have data-driven recommendations pushed to them as quickly as possible so they can spend more time taking action, making decisions, less time in spreadsheets, less time spent poring over doctrine. And the other vector is making sure that they actually have a wide decision space available to them by ensuring they have the capabilities and resources available to them when and where they need to be there. So thank you.
All right, great, thanks. Hey, before I turn this over to Matt, because he's a humble guy, let me just say this. So Matt wears 3 hats, right? He's the Director of Intelligence for the United Nations Command. He's the Director for Intelligence for United States Forces Korea, and the Deputy Director for Intelligence for the Combined Forces Command. That's pretty amazing for a colonel in our Army. So Matt, I know you want to say that about yourself, but that's pretty phenomenal. So I'll turn the time over to you.
Just a lot of stuff that doesn't get done. I'm Matt Skaggs, current USF J2 and all those other things. But previous to this job, I was the director of Next Gen C2. And where we started with that was a bunch of guys that were angry at all of the things they had to do with a bunch of boxes over the years. And by boxes, I mean the legacy mission command systems. And those systems, ostensibly really good. We were at Force 21. We could see all the things. We could shoot all the things until we couldn't. Because we had a high cognitive workload. As an intel guy working up the hill at 25th Infantry Division, I got threatened to get fired a million times. You got to make this machine work. I got to know where the enemy was, and we had a whole crew of guys behind the curtain frantically trying to make all these reports correlate and normalize so we could put red dots on there. Do we know whether or not they're accurate? No, but I didn't want to get fired. But as we talk about AI, that's one of the things that stuck with me. I had all of these red dots that we worked furiously to get done. When I joined the Army, they said there'd be no math, but I was back there doing math, doing it poorly, trying to get those red dots on the screen. But once they got there, we had to do something with them. And that was to port them over to FATAS to be able to fire a fire mission. But we couldn't. We had to get them onto CPOF so General Flynn, who was my boss at the time, could see where the enemy was versus where the friendly forces were, but we couldn't because we didn't have system interoperability internally to our own command posts. And that's what we're trying to get out of Next Gen C2. But over and above internal interoperability, it's external interoperability. How are we talking to the joint forces? It turns out they have their own mission command problems, and none of those, everything is on a different data model. Because you see, when we got told to build mission command systems, each warfighting function in the Army, each service, each country went out and bought their own thing. Each one of those things has its own data model, and they can't talk. So interoperability between sister services and partner countries isn't a thing. And then over and above all that, the cognitive workload just to maintain situational awareness. We think we're doing pretty good, but as we've learned lessons from the Ukraine and other regions in the world that are in conflict, things move quickly. They move in seconds. And the data latency that we have on our legacy mission command systems is hours and sometimes days. You can't shoot those targets. So in my view, and the things we try to get after Next Gen C2, and I'd laugh when Tom kept mentioning spreadsheets. About 2 years ago, we went to Fort Hood. And I'm an intel guy. I don't know anything about logistics, and we're trying to figure out what we could do to build a mission command system for them. And it ended up being an ARC AI. And these poor guys would talk about, I'd ask them, how do you manage your commodities? How do you know where things are? And they're like, well, I've got my green book, and I've got these spreadsheets, and I crunch the numbers. But it's not networked with anything. So this poor guy, he would go out and Google formulas on his phone to figure out how he could maintain situational awareness of ammunition, and that's no way to run a railroad. So Tom and the Gavini team have done wonders for those kinds of folks. But in my mind, I say all the horror stories of the things I've experienced over the years. That is what AI is now. It's lowering the cognitive domain. It's taking that data, all those different data models and boxes, and translating it, getting it onto, comporting it to a universal data model, putting it onto a message format that's readable by sister services, by our partner countries. And that way, and once all that data is in the right place and it's translated so it's readable by multiple applications, then we can get after building in the agents to do the use cases, the fires, the mission command, the lowering the cognitive burden for the commander. And I think we're making great strides in that. Over the last 2 years, we've moved the ball really far. But in my mind, it's getting out of that old system-centric architecture and moving towards a data-centric architecture, and that's how we win the fight, and that's how we maintain data dominance. Thanks, sir.
All right, thanks, Matt. John?
Thank you, sir. General Brown, thanks for the opportunity to speak about a topic I'm passionate about. It's not at all intimidating to have you and General Rainey in the front row there, but I feel like I've gotten off on the wrong foot, though, because we've already violated the first rule of public speaking, which is never follow Admiral Paparo on stage, because you're certain to sound like an idiot. So with that, I have two disclaimers. The first is I'm not a technologist. I'm a practitioner, and I've innovated out of necessity and because my bosses told me to. And then, secondly, the 11th Airborne Division is not a transformation and contact division. So we currently don't have Next Gen C2. My teammates from 4th ID, 25th ID are doing great things with Next Gen C2. But we don't have it yet, so we're still operating off the Maven Smart system and doing the best that we can to set conditions for a smooth transition as we work our way into that. So I've been in this, I've been on the CJAD C2 journey now for about 5 years, and it's a journey that has no final destination because it's about decision dominance, and that is the North Star. So we're always trying to get better. We're trying to get faster, better decisions, more data to allow us to do more things and make decisions at echelon and at scale. But I've learned a lot along the way because I've had some really great bosses. So I've had the privilege to work for General Kurilla, General Donahue, General Clark, General McFarland. And all four of them, the thing they have in common is they communicate a vision for the organization. They're absolutely relentless. And then they use their rank to bust bureaucracy on behalf of the organization, which really allows us to go out and move out and take some risk, play some small bets, and then learn fast, rapidly iterate to make the organization better, make us more lethal in the things that we do as headquarters. So whether that's General Carrillo saying we're going to be the first AI-enabled corps, or hey, we're transforming CENTCOM into a data-centric warfighting headquarters from what we've been doing for the last 20 years of GWAT, or General Donahue, meeting us in Germany and driving us to be better partners with the Ukrainians, using the tools at our disposal to share points of interest and to build shared understanding with a partner that you can't actually be co-located with. So we've done a lot of this, and I would say that the thing that we have in common between all those organizations is that these were all grassroots movements with operational experimentation versus Army modernization, because that's what we can do at our tactical level. We can leverage existing training exercises. We can use operational deployments as catalysts to really accelerate the learning and solidify and to bring industry to us, to allow us to take prudent risk and to really move the needle. And so whether the first such exercise was the Scarlet Dragon exercise with the 18th Airborne Corps, which is still ongoing. Every 90 days, doing these sprints, meeting with industry, using the best computer vision tools, best algorithms, and then experimenting and also measuring the success to see how far we've come, and then validating that learning and sharing it with the rest of the Army. CENTCOM had the Digital Falcon exercise, still ongoing. Despite all the other things going on in CENTCOM, they never miss an opportunity to get better, to become more lethal using their warfighting tools. First Corps, Courage Lethality. We just executed our first iteration using a scenario in the South China Sea, using live data, using the best tools that are being used across all COCOMs right now to make us better and to learn as an organization. And then organically, with the 11th Airborne Division, we've started our Angel Strike exercise series. So along the same line, we're on to our third iteration, getting ready to do number 4 here. And it's low cost, no cost, making use of existing exercises, existing joint fires platforms, organic platforms, sharing data, establishing tactical data links so that we can learn faster and be better, build a data literate workforce, and be able to adopt these new tools so that when it is our turn to get the next gen C2, we're ready to move out and ready to make not only that platform better, but make the Army better, and hopefully the joint force. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
All right, great. Hey, thanks. Listen, there are a lot of great comments here. I'd like to ask a question of the entire panel, because I think of this particular audience and this particular group, this will be really, really valuable. I'm going to start with Mr. Tick, and I'm going to start with one of the comments you made earlier about establishing a national system under the watchful eye of our Russian counterparts. And so the question is, since other people may be establishing a similar outcome or trying to establish a similar outcome, what lessons did you learn? Whether 1, 2, or 3 things that if you had to do it again, you might change or you might improve on something. And then I would ask each of the other panel members from your discussion, Tom, from the industry perspective on Next Gen C2, and then Matt, your perspective, having been a kind of a plank holder in that, and Denise, you as the authority on our networks, and then operationally, John, back to you.
So, if I got the question right, so what we have learned from the kind of the Russian side, so I think if you look at every kind of defense AI strategy, then it's the same as it has been with cyber. So basically, they are using AI to actually kind of enhance their possibilities to kind of reach their end state. So in that sense, nothing has changed. What we have to be kind of aware of is that how much access do they have this technology. So fortunately now right now they are behind the West, but of course, we have to be aware, like Anthropic just found 0 days, which different cyber operators are looking for years. They found like several hundred or even more of them. So we have to make sure that they don't have those capabilities in their hand. So when we are looking what has changed, then I wouldn't I don't have anything to pinpoint out besides that they are using the simple tools in the Ukraine campaign, like manipulating social networks, social kind of channels, using the chats to kind of interact with Ukrainians. So they are more or less using the AI where they are good. It's information operations, cyber operations. So right now our main concern is about our own people's kind of cognitive capability of kind of getting this using this information or understanding what is wrong. In terms of cyber capabilities or kind of AI in their C2, I'm not aware, at least, like any huge improvements there.
Okay, great. Tom?
So what has changed and what could go better?
Yeah, what lessons did you learn as we're working with the 4th ID and the 25th?
Yeah, I think one of the things that immediately comes to mind on lessons learned with the 4th ID is just the delivery model we're using for Next Gen C2 has been really productive. We're iterating on exercises every roughly 45 days, right? We've got data scientists and engineers sitting directly next to soldiers, making sure that the capabilities that are getting delivered are the capabilities that are actually needed, and they are advancing in lockstep with the technologies. Because 6 months ago, I couldn't do the things I can do today with AI, and 12 months before that, it was a completely different game as well. So taking advantage of both that fast-paced delivery model, make sure we're iterating with the customer, but also the ever-changing technology has been really important to the success of Next Gen C2 so far. I think opportunities for the future are how do we make sure that as we're iterating with soldiers directly with 4th ID, that's a representative sample of the rest of the divisions across the Army as well.
And in your experience with the young soldiers, how are they adapting to this technology?
I think they're adapting quite quickly, because the beauty of AI is that it is immediately more intuitive and accessible than a traditional software product. So we had one example from Ivy Sting 5, where a lieutenant colonel, one of our users, was interacting with our agent for sustainment, and he was impressed with the initial capabilities. And when we originally dreamed it up, it was meant to kind of give you a better insights into shortages, into your risks on the battlefield, into your just another layer of insight and analysis. He started to try to use it to plan a DSA jump. It wasn't something that we had trained for, put into our eval suite, anything like that. But because it had access to the right data and the right tools, he got to a workable plan in about 20 minutes, and normally it would take them days to get through. So that's an example of just positive success, breeding more success, and challenging like the current status of like, I want to push it further. So that was good feedback for us. Like, okay, we should plan for this as an eventual use case and make it from 20 minutes, can we get down to 5 minutes, right? So great outcome there.
Okay, Matt?
Sure, I heard you kind of make allusions to a zero trust network, and as looking back through what we deal with in Korea and Next Gen C2, the reasons that Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude et al. Work is because they ride on what we call impact level 2, dirty internet, and they've got access to the world's worth of data, and they can answer those questions and draw the pictures because they can access different agents to do those things. What we've learned, on the military side, all of our data is in various degrees of secure networks. For Next Gen C2 was impact level 4, which is FOUL level, was in the tactical units. Impact level 6 is in the SIPRs and the command posts, and then the nerds like me ride on IL-7, JWICs, and none of those data sources cross over. So it makes it pretty difficult to have a robust large language model or any kind of agent that can pull from all those data sources. And then let's not even talk about interacting with partner countries. That's near and dear to our heart in the Republic of South Korea, but all of the neat things that we're doing on our networks are exceedingly difficult to get to them. They can't, especially at speed and scale, and vice versa. We can't see necessarily what they're doing. I mean, we can to a certain extent, but not to the fulsome nature we need to, and vice versa. So I think one of the things, and I know there's a lot of companies, and it's happening in the Army, thinking through a zero trust infrastructure where all of that data rides into a gray cloud. And you can access it based on your credentials or your need to know. So whether it's an impact level 2 piece of data that you're running an unclassified large language model, or if I'm running a target agent on IL6 or IL7, it's all accessing that same data source. And we're allowed to do the decision making, the offloading of the cognitive burden, the situational awareness on a scale of an architecture, different applications and agents simultaneously, which is something we're trying to get to, but we're not there now. But I would tell you that that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned over the years doing this, is until we can get to that place, it's hard to say we can be truly agentic and data enabled and using AI to speed decision dominance.
Okay, Denise?
Yes, so, a couple of things. One, Estonia, very cool country, and what y'all have done. The most wired, this was years ago when I did my country study in the War College, most wired nation in the world, and able to coup your entire government because of how wired you are. So you guys have came a long way, and we've learned a lot from attacks that happened in Estonia, and then from the cyber defense team you have there. And what we're seeing now is the speed and scale that our adversaries are able to exploit vulnerabilities, right? So now they're using AI to exploit vulnerabilities of commercial sector infrastructure. I'm happy to report they have not done this for the Army yet, just saying. And so, but we have to be able to respond in kind, which means we can't use antiquated ways of, you're getting attacked by AI, and then you have a human trying to read everything in the logs and understand. So now it's how do we leverage AI to secure the network? We've been doing that. We're seeing that we had, what we used to, we'd have the attacks, and we'd have to go through the logs, et cetera. The human did to where it would take weeks. Now we have gone from weeks, days, hours to minutes to being able to quarantine and isolate those threats, which is pretty significant. The other thing we're trying to work through is this continuous monitoring. So our cyber, my higher headquarters, has an initiative, Panoptic Junction, which is really about continuous monitoring and being able to detect any anomalies and being able to respond in a quick manner. As we look at, when we talk about the cyber attacks being AI-driven, it's not all about disconnecting you. And this is where I get concerned about how we use AI for warfighting functions. It's about making the warfighters have doubt in the data that they're seeing and slowing them down to be able to conduct those operations because they don't have that assurity of the data they're receiving and pulling together for that common operating picture. I was in Task Force 21 as a Brigade S6, unique time, and I can tell you what was going on in Task Force 21 and what folks were envisioning of Task Force 21 is now coming to a reality. We now have the ability to leverage AI to integrate this data. Before it was SneakerNet. Basically, you would take the hard drive over to another computer thumb drive before it became an issue. And that's how you were passing that data, and you no longer have to do that. But with that comes a lot of, it's a larger threat. So Colonel Skaggs was talking about, we don't have this ability to see all the data and bring all the data together across these different networks. That's also an initiative that our cyber is taking on, is how do we see what's going on in the networks on the unclass side, on SIPR, on the high side, and start bringing all that information together to really have a good sight picture of what vulnerabilities you have and what attacks may be occurring. And so I'll pause there. I could go on and on. I'm such a geek, but I'll stop there.
That's great. John?
Yeah, thanks, sir. There's nothing that brings the task at hand into focus like people shooting ballistic missiles at you. Mm-hmm. And so these operational deployments really are opportunities. And whether that's 2022 in Wiesbaden trying to do a remote train advise assist for Ukrainian partners, or whether that's CENTCOM from post October 7th, when you're dealing with Hamas, the Houthis, Al Qaeda, and IAMGs. They are battle laboratories for getting really good at your trade. So one of the things about Ukraine was just the kind of the vastness of the battle space, the ubiquitous sensors, but having this A2AD environment where you could not put traditional collection platforms over top of the battlefield. So you had to be able to use remote sensing. There was just endless amounts of data that was coming in, and you had to somehow be able to sense, make sense, strike, and then assess and do it all again remotely. And this is where we really started to drill down into the ATR computer vision models, working with industry to get them better and better to be able to do that job. That was just one of the challenges. And then if you look at operations in CENTCOM, as Tom was saying, it becomes much more than just sensor shooter targeting exercises or shortening kill chains, but it's decision dominance across all warfighting functions, because magazine depth becomes a real thing. And so how do you maintain visibility across all of that? So it's not just about maintaining custody of a target, but it's the custody of the target, it's the effects, it's the BDA, and then the impact and the demand signal you're sending not only to your own sustainment units, but also to the defense industrial base. So how do you build objects that can be memorialized in these databases that'll make us better and more effective? And then Matt mentioned this as well, as just the challenges of sharing with partners. We never fight alone, but we're still not very good at sharing data with partners seamlessly. Data interoperability is key, but we all have national policies and restrictions, and all for good reason. But the nirvana is open architecture, where we're seamlessly passing in a zero trust environment to be able to be more efficient, to be more lethal partners. One of General Clark's people, partners, and prevailing, we have to get that right. Whether it's the 24 plus partner nations in the Pacific, or it's the 18 partners in CENTCOM AOR, it's still very challenging. And so the closer we can get to that interoperability, the better. And that requires leaders in our organizations to be trilingual. So you have to have the operational piece, you have to have the technical piece, you also have to understand the acquisition piece, and then maybe another language would be just the cybersecurity requirements that go along with all this. As you're onboarding new tech, how do you do it in a safe manner, a responsible manner, but you're taking enough risk that you can move quickly and make our partners better, make us more cohesive as a combined force.
All right, great. Some great lessons learned. Some great questions from the audience, and John, you just led into one of them. Denise, I'm going to come back to you, and then maybe an industry perspective and an international perspective, and then maybe from a warfighting perspective. And you mentioned it, John, it's about the policies. So what policies, or what are we doing to help clear up and clarify policies so that we can talk internal to the Department of War and then to our allied and partner nations? What are the roadblocks from that, and what are the opportunities we have to overcome that?
And that's to me. Okay.
Yeah,
so I'll start with just talking a little bit about Next Gen C2, and this is how that relates to policy. When we started out with Next Gen C2, it was going to be a strictly SBU environment, right? And so it was almost looking at it as it was going to be bifurcated from the larger network. We very quickly were able to team up with 4ID and be able to bring their devices into what we call the Army Unified Directory Service. And why that's important is now it's one directory service with all your cybersecurity policies, to where when they initially started loading apps onto these devices, we were able to see, hey, there's some vulnerabilities, some serious security and considerations we needed to take and put in place. But that's only one part of it. The other part we've done is we have empowered the 25s. We have empowered your signal soldiers down there on the line to be able to actually determine the timing and tempo of when patches or when new software updates are going to be applied to that environment, which is something we haven't been able to do before. And now they have the ability to drive, the timing and tempo the commander does of when those policies will be put in place on that network. And so, we talk about, SBU Next Gen C2 isn't reliant on the Department of War Information Network for the Army, but is able to access it, which is pretty critical to where you're not reliant, but you can still access all those tools that are in place. And so, again, that was a policy that we had to work through. We had an IL4 environment that we were bringing in, IL5 capability, but we were able to maintain that boundary to where the information did not cross over or spill over from one environment to the other. And so I think that's probably the best I can give you right now without going into like extra like geek world. So I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Thanks, Denise.
So from a policy perspective, I think one of the biggest challenges that we face as an industry partner trying to come in, bring in our own software platform or commercial data and integrate it with government data is just the accreditation process in general, right? So we have our IL5 accreditation through DISA, and then to have to go to every service and maybe even sub-service level to get additional authorizations is just an additional administrative burden that can take months, if not longer. And the importance of the interconnected data that Colonel Skaggs was talking about is really, really fundamental as well, because once you have those service level accreditations, you still can't share immediately the data between the services. And so to actually like come up with more connected solutions in this era of agents and agent networks that operate not just on Army data, but Army plus DLA plus DCMA data, the administrative impediment is challenging and still there, and this is definitely something that we need to work through. So that's, from a Next Gen C2 perspective, I think there's been a lot of great movement. Honestly, we have special dispensation to deploy as through our partners, right? And we're bringing the right data to bear as part of that. But if you zoom out from Next Gen C2, I think there's still some opportunities for improvement for sure.
Yeah, and if I could add one other thing, the HQDA CIO also empowered the warfighters by giving the Corps commanders authorized and official authorities for their enclaves, their tactical network, which is huge in being able to roll out capabilities quickly. So they assume the risk.
Okay.
Yep.
So I will answer two parts. One is like what we do internally, and one is cooperation with US. So my journey with kind of cooperating with US started when General Alexander was still a cyber commander. And since then, I've seen several presentations which were only dots and commas, because FDO had deleted some of the things like words. By today, I would say that all of us, and including US, have made a huge improvement. So going back to one meeting when one of your generals said that in cyber everything starts from unclass, unlike Intel where everything starts from top secret. So we shouldn't kind of over-classify that. And there are areas where we are getting better. There are policies in place in the alliance as well, which could enable us to do it much faster. So I would say we are in a better position than we have ever been before. Now, how Estonia has conducted this kind of policy development over the years is that we first make the solution and then make the policy. And the AI AI gives us another opportunity to do the same. So Estonia hosts the NATO cyber range as well as NATO's classified cyber range. This allows us actually to build those systems before we actually make policies for them. So, and obviously Estonia is much smaller, so this certain agility is built in already.
Okay. From a warfighting command perspective, Matt or John, how do you see the policies helping, or what could we change in policies that would help you more effective?
I would say real quick, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Sir. This is not a data problem, this is not an architecture problem, it's a rules problem. And as a guy that's done FDO and InfoSec my entire adult life, I've never really got my arms around what the rules of the road are, on what the data, the backside metadata on position, location information, the dots we put on maps. I don't know what's allowed to pass because I know it's working, and I candidly have been out of that game for a little bit, but we need to snap the chalk line and say, this is what an object that is passable between aisle 6 and aisle 4 looks like. This is what we kind of know what 7 to 6 looks like, but then over and above that, what does an object look like that I can pass to the Koreans or the Brits or the Thais? I know fundamentally on the FDO side what that looks like, but we don't have a data standard that says, yea, verily, all that you are in the data space, this is what you're allowed to do. And I think once we got to that point at the national level, we could move very quickly to the thing I talked about before and having a shareable data enclave. I think we're getting kind of spun around, or we're spinning our wheels.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say we're getting there, and appreciate the Army senior leaders that are willing to delegate authorities down to operational commanders, as you were talking about, giving the corps commanders increased authorities to own their own risk. Because I think they have the warfighters have a better understanding of really how that affects them, how it would affect the enterprise. I'm a big fan of exceptions to policy when necessary, and so if they make sense, but to get ATOs, authorities to operate at the speed of war instead of going through normal bureaucratic processes. So that a maniacal sense of urgency to get things done because warfighters' lives are at stake. And so all of that helps make us better. I know here in U.S. Army Pacific and Indo-PACOM, we're rolling out the Indo-PACOM Mission Network, which should increase our ability to share with partners much more seamlessly. And we're rolling it out during our exercises, and we're going to find kind of the gaps, and we're going to make it better. And it's that continuous feedback loop, which will help us get there and make people feel more confident in what we're sharing and what the impact is.
Okay, great. The next three questions are going to tie together, and John, I'm going to start right back with you. And it's a topic near and dear to our hearts. It's about training our soldiers. And how do we train our soldiers to use AI? Is it everybody's job? Is it in every MOS? Is it a certain group of people? And then now that we train them to use it, how do we teach them to be, tying to the panel that was earlier today about training, how do we teach them to be critical of it? To not just accept it for what it is, to be critical of the outcome of AI so that we can make good value-based decisions, not just data-based decisions. And then, Tom, as we come down, if you could give it, how do you train industry? How do you get industry-trained people in AI, and how do you do that internal? If you could help us understand that, and then we'll just come down the line. John?
Sure, thank you. You have to train everybody. We need a data-literate workforce. With the younger generation, it's much easier than you think because they're digital natives, and they've had computers in their pockets their entire lives, and they understand it. The UI, UX is intuitive to them. They're inquisitive, they demand more, they want to know about the data, they want access to everything because that's how they've grown up. And so I think you've got to train that like you train anything else through reps and sets. You have to give them practical exercises. We do data literacy courses to kind of baseline people. I think that's mostly for the field grade officers and above. But the reps and sets through exercises and then making it realistic and making it interesting. So letting our Intel analysts look at live data from within the Indo-PACOM AOR, to let them look and see what's happening in the Straits of Hormuz right now, and be able to try and process all that, use our tools in an exercise where you can do no harm, but it's giving them that increased lethality, it's validating our systems and processes, and they will take it and they'll show you where you're coming up short, whether that's transport in your command post, or whether that's at the tactical edge in a DDoS environment. They'll let you know when it's not working. And so that type of feedback is invaluable. And I think it's agnostic to MOS. I think they all need to know how to use data, how to use AI, and they want to know. They're going to demand it. So we owe them those opportunities to train and get better.
Do you think that's, before we come to you, Matt, do you think that's, it starts in some kind of block of instruction and entry-level training, and then it gets enhanced over years? Or how do you see that happening given everybody should do it?
I think we have folks that look at how we onboard new soldiers, new officers, new NCOs, adjusting our POI, which they're very good at doing to make sure we're staying relevant, and baselining our formations with a certain level of data literacy. But I think at the end of the day, they're just going to learn by doing, like we do most things, like whether it's marksmanship or battle drills or medical training. You got to put your hands on it, whether it's hands on a keyboard or making a decision, on an ATAC device and passing data that way. They are consumers of it. They are super users, and I think that's the best way to really get them familiar with it and to make them more capable, more lethal at their MOS.
Okay, Matt.
Coming up as a young captain, I went to, I think it was a 10-day FBCB2 course, and I remember I did a 2 or 3 week D6 course, and all my soldiers through that. Same thing with CPOF, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Did that make me know how to use this thing? No. I couldn't run D6 to save my life. I had a bunch of guys that could do it. I could barely run my FBCB2. So I think as the Army, our natural line of drift is jam people into a training pipeline, they're going to come out competent. But as we designed Next Gen C2, we had this thought, who goes to iPhone school to learn how to use their iPhone or their Galaxy phone? Nobody, because you can pick it up out of the box and it works, and you know how to hit the apps and they work. And so we're designing, to General Cogwell's point about UI and UX, user interface, user experience, we're building the applications, our teammates are building the applications so soldiers can get on them and operate them, and they work, and they build up more fluency, but they're at a pretty much baseline when they start. And I think as the folks out in the industry are here, if we're not building applications on the front side that soldiers touch that meet that modicum, then that's not helpful to us. But I think as we get more into agentic AI and we're using those agents to infer sense making, that's where I think we're going to have to start building folks that can detect model hallucination and model drift, because the other thing that we've been brought up in the Army is we hold these dots to be self-evident. If they're on my map and they're red or blue, then they're there and they're okay. And that's just the way our brain works. And so nobody's looking into the backside. We're not there yet, but eventually we're going to need to have people that are checking to make sure we're not having a hallucination and drift, and we're looking at the wrong things on the map or shooting the wrong targets or estimating the wrong commodity levels.
Okay.
So from an industry perspective, when I think about how we train our own teams on AI, it's like the first thing I'll say is it doesn't eliminate the need for subject matter expertise at all, right? The having the right software architect to design the code base is still essential. It's very easy to have an AI agent, code agent, spit out 200,000 lines of code that is poorly architected, has cyber vulnerabilities, or just doesn't work. So that's first and foremost. Like, the team is still important, the skills are still important. But I think what's interesting with how fast the technology is changing, we've tried to find the right balance between how much organic, like, development and growth do you want to get out of your team, how much innovation versus how much guardrail. And there's got to be a balance, because if you train them on this is the way to do it today, in 3 months, that's probably outdated, and it's got to evolve. So we look for the right people with the right curious attitude, the right ownership, to be champions and be the trainers of the rest of the team, and then provide them with the tools, the capabilities, and then there's some fundamental training as well. But by and large, the excitement from the engineering and development side is there just to take advantage of the capabilities, because it allows them to do more, so much more quickly. And that's true of our users as well. I think on the other side of our house, like if you take away the software development side and go to the business side, where they're not as AI native perhaps, I think the same model holds, is not give them basic generic training, but ask them, what is the job you're trying to do that you spend the most time on, and how can I help you offload that cognitive overload and put it into the agent, right? And then take someone who might be a detractor, turn them into an advocate, and have them help to train the rest of the workforce. And that's been working quite well for us.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes in the military we use the term a unit trainer. Somebody is passionate about it, wants to help other people learn it as they go forward. Mr. Tick, from your perspective?
Yeah, we are not there yet. So we are training more or less right now the subject matter experts and operators, so they would actually be able to use the AI capabilities. So because they are the only ones who can verify what's actually coming back from that. So we know that we have to start training the soldiers as well. Estonia has a conscript army, so next year we will have minimum amount of conscripts, especially for that, so we can retrain our staff and officers and the non-coms, so they can train those new skills like drones and AI to the soldiers. But yeah, right now I would say that we are doing more or less this kind of a expert level training for those people who are actually subject matter expert, because AI is enabling them, not cyber or something else.
Okay. And then from your foxhole?
Yes, so I think while it's important that we train the soldiers to understand the technology, I think it is as important that they understand their craft, that they're able to think critically and question what they're seeing from that tool. We can show them what right looks like from an AI tool, but they need to be able to see what does wrong look like, because that's how they're going to start learning and training the AI technology. So it is a continuous loop. It shouldn't stop at just the tool. We need those soldiers to continuously train the tool itself. I mean, that's what we're doing. That's what Army Transformation Initiative is about, the continuous modernization and everything we're doing with Next Gen C2. And so now it's getting the soldiers to have that same mindset, to think critically, question, what they need to question when the AI tool is generating a response. And again, they have to see what wrong looks like. If they don't see what wrong looks like and they only see what right looks like, they're not going to have those reps and sets to be able to respond and to train that tool.
Okay, great. So Matt, let's go back to something you said, and it's one of the questions that came up. I think we've talked a lot today about the advantages of AI, what it can do, how we should train our soldiers, be critical thinkers. But AI is based on the data, and some of that data may not be as good as we might want it to be. So as you mentioned, it starts creating things like hallucinations, drift, all those things come as part of AI. How do we put something in place to protect against that? And then how do we train our soldiers against that? And I'll start with Matt, but anybody, please add in.
That is, I would tell you, kind of a conundrum. Because in my mind, is you have an entire sensor architecture. Each one of those is offloading data in a different way, and it needs to be read separately. So you're using a first level, once that hits that data layer, you're using a first level of agents to do the correlation and the curation and the normalization to be readable by the applications. And then it gets up to the next level of agents that are sense-making agents. That's where you get your ATR segmentation, your logistics, the map, the terrain data, all of those things, and then it gets fed up onto a map. So it's going through multi-layers of agents before it's usable or it's seen at the user interface by a soldier. So I would tell you, unless we have data scientists that are monitoring that data flow through the backside, it's going to be very difficult for a 10-level soldier to see that. And I think that's part and parcel of what's happening in the AUSA community. The Army's starting to build data scientists that know about observability and scalability, and then can do that real-time monitoring to monitor for drift. It's a lot harder with military data than it is with an LLM. When you type into Gemini or something and you get a bad readout, you're like, oh, that's a hallucination. I asked it a question of something that's happening this year, and they gave me last year's data. It's easy to see that, but it's, I think, probably a lot harder with sensor data and data coming off of vehicles.
Maybe I'll add on to that a little bit. Important point on the fundamentals of data science, on the actual integration of data and monitoring of the data, and we talk about AI and we always think about the chat and the generative AI, but there's a whole suite of classical machine learning models out there aimed at things like anomaly detection or entity resolution that are still trained and validated in classical approaches to make sure that ground level of data is trustworthy and useful. And then when we think about agentic AI, it's not just train a model and use its latent knowledge to generate responses, right? That's the importance of the agentic AI layer, is that it's actually accessing data on demand. It's accessing, in some cases, machine learning models to make data-informed, validated decisions at the end of the day that have a decision lineage along with them. So a user can, yes, they can look at the recommendation, but they can also understand how the AI got to that recommendation. And then the last point I'll make is just the importance of treating AI the same as we would other data science deliverables, is the importance of having an evaluation suite. How do you test the outcomes through a variety of different inputs and outputs to give yourself a better feeling for this is, quote unquote, good enough to go to production or to the field or whatever it might be. So all those pieces are critically important in my mind.
Okay.
I would only add one thing, which my friend from Skype, which is from Estonia, told me years ago at the GAT conference when we were in a similar panel, said like, in Skype where quality assurance ends, then common sense starts. So I would still kind of, I would actually kind of emphasize that it's really important. Matt already mentioned critical thinking. So we can't kind of outsource everything to AI. So we have to more and more teach people how to do critical thinking and use this common sense. So if this red dot is in the wrong place, then it probably is, because the AI might be hallucinating, not because it's poisoned, but because it's overloaded. Simply, the server farm is overloaded.
Okay, great. Well, we're just about out of time, so what I'd like to do is we'll just Denise, start with you, and go down maybe 3 minutes or so on closing comments each. Kind of how you see the current future of AI, and how we see that applicable in our military domain.
Yep, sure. So, as we've been talking about Ukraine, but we also mentioned, operations in CENTCOM, and when I look at the most recent operations in CENTCOM and the network, and it was about how do we assure, that freedom of maneuver, and we do that through secure, operate, defend. And so the future of AI is going to be able to secure at speed, and to operate at speed. And the one thing we didn't really talk about, I didn't bring up, was, there is a demand and we need it. It's called a digital twin, to where it can go and do a complete twin of your network. And when you're able to do that, then you're able to simulate the what ifs. Hey, what happens if this node goes down? What happens if we lose these critical comms? And then you're able to model those responses to those outages very quickly. So instead of taking months, maybe a year, to look at the what ifs, if you lose critical nodes, you could do this in hours and days and be able to have the next order of conversation. Because I think that's what we really have to look at is, AI, it empowers commanders. Commanders assume risk, not AI. But it also allows us to do, as humans, only what we can do, and that is that critical thinking. All we can do is train the AI, but we have the ability to do the critical thinking, not the AI, so we can't be over-reliant on it. And then defending is really, going back to somewhat of what I talked about with the digital twin. I see in the future defending is going to be that predictive analytics to look at, hey, what are potential attack vectors and pathways, and how do we defend this, and really enabling red teams to go out and become proficient in defending that critical terrain. Our cyber commander, Lieutenant General Chris Eubank, always talks about, our cyber's job is really to set the land domain, but it's by, with, and through the cyber domain. And so to be able to do that, that means we have to be able to deliver in assured cyberspace. And I'll pause there.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I have one tactical and one maybe strategical comment. So tactical, it might enable all of us, if we employ the AI really well, to do things that we could never imagine before. So we could have, instead of one battalion HQ, 3 with our supported with AI, and if we lose the AI, we can join them together and they are as one. So basically, it allows us to kind of do things with our units that were not possible before that. On the second hand, I would also warn that those discussions that we are having on this side, on the other hand, on the other side, they are already trying out different methods. They don't have these limitations of whether this hallucinates or doesn't hallucinate, whether the red dot is on a hospital or the red dot is on a military object. So we have to keep that in mind as well, that we would not train too heavy models for ourselves while our adversaries are kind of using the benefit of not doing that.
Great, thanks. Tom?
Yeah, I think we're looking to close out this panel. Like, I think a lot of times when we think about AI and ML, we're thinking about its use case at the tactical edge, right? On drones, processing intel data, connecting the sensor to the shooter again. So just going back to my earlier comment, to truly have decision superiority, I think we still need a grounding in like sustainment certainty, and that's why the NGC2 work is really important, and it's a microcosm of what we're trying to do across the forces, right? Where we have AI software starting to integrate these warfighting functions more completely because they're built on this foundation of shared data, and we're starting to see these individual agents be created by industry and work together to execute more seamlessly. So I think that's just the beginning, right? And it's really exciting to see where it's going. But I think in the near term, just with the pace of development, this collaborative working environment through NGC2, between industry, between the Army, has been really fruitful and allows us to really take advantage of the technology as it kind of continuously adapts.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Matt?
So I started my career as a tank gunner. I spent my whole life trying to find targets before I got shot. Became a tank commander. I spent most of my time trying to make sure my radios work or not be lost. As I graduated up to Intel guy, all I wanted to do was D6 to work so I didn't get fired. But I wasn't doing Intel. I was just making sure the machine worked, and so on and so forth. So I think as we go to AI, all of those things I mentioned are cognitive burden or fighting the machine. And AI should prevent or mitigate all of those things. Tankers should be able, or whoever's fighting on the ground, I don't even know if we have tanks anymore. I know we have tanks, but we don't have very many tanks anymore. But people doing those jobs should be able to immediately know where targets are for direct fire and indirect fire. They should know where they're at. They shouldn't mess with comms. People work in mission command systems shouldn't spend 80% of their time trying to make their machinery work so they can do 20% of intelligence analysis. And I couldn't agree more with what Jim McPhail said. The more we get deep into AI, the more we build agents to do the thing, the use case, the pain point, the more it's going to become a crutch. And we'll use AI to do the critical thinking part, the intelligence analyst, the commander's intuition, all of the other things. And I think where we're at now is a good place because it's lessening the cognitive burden of all those things I mentioned. But I think we got to be careful as an army to not go too far in and build all the agents to do all the things.
Okay. John?
Okay. Yeah, I think just continuing to trust and empower the warfighter to develop these tools. Never let a crisis go to waste. So using operational requirements as accelerants to this process to really drive the innovation, drive the AI, drive the tools that we're utilizing, but not be reckless about it. So Matt talked about 10-level soldiers with these tools and maybe not being confident or in the quality of the data or the potential for hallucinations, but that 10-level soldier has a 20-level supervisor who has a 30-level supervisor who's got a warrant officer somewhere in that operations center. We have officers and senior NCOs with experience and intuition and judgment who can kind of help keep us moving in the right direction, but we also have industry engineers with true subject matter expertise that sit in our operations centers. They go to the field with us. They've been deployed with us. And that's where that learning and that synergy happens. And then we've built in some things too in forms of highly qualified experts with CTOs and CDOs. And we're sharing best practices across organizations like the CDAO, Chief Digital AI Office, to make kind of standardized things in how we do business across the Joint Force, across the COCOMs, to do it in a responsible manner, but one that's aggressive and makes us a more lethal fighting force.
No, that's great. Clearly, we're fortunate today to have this panel with both so much operational experience and so much technical background. You don't see that every day across the Army. I remember as a young lieutenant, we had Harvard graphics discs, and then we graduated to PowerPoint. We thought that was so much faster, and now we graduate to another form to help us go faster. I think it's clear that AI is a great tool for us to use. At the same time, it cannot replace the command responsibilities, the risk acceptance, the value-based judgments. It can help us do that faster, to help us see a course of actions, Mr. Tick, to your point, that we may not see ourselves, and it opens up the aperture. And then I think that the most telling piece, and you all said this, is that clearly the current and next generation of our warfighting nations, our soldiers, are going to be much better at this. They are digital natives. They live in this environment. They understand it probably much better than we give them credit for. But it's no doubt that every soldier on the battle space is going to have to be AI fluent and be able to use that and understand when it's value added and when it's at risk. So if you would please join me and give the panel a great round of applause.
Wow, great day one. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the programming portion of the day. We'll begin tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for breakfast in the exhibit halls. Our first keynote, General Kim Ji-ha, Chief of Staff, Republic of Korea, will begin promptly at 0900. Mahalo.
It's not right to get uptight, to fold your hands and cry. Stand up and fight with all of your might. You can make it if you try.